Welcome to the Armstrong and Getty Show. So the riots in Great Britain are over for the time being, or the worst of it. So now everybody around the world, not just in England, are trying to figure out what was behind it, what happened, and is that possible here?
Alistair Wanklyn of Fox News joins us from London. Alistair, welcome.
Yeah, thanks, guys. David Cameron, the Prime Minister, here this morning talking about that, saying we've got a generation of lost souls, not exactly the words he used, but he said a generation of people who have no sense of responsibility. Bad parenting, he said, is one. Also, lack of discipline in schools. He spoke about introducing some kind of enforced national service. I don't know what you guys would call that, sort of a community service, go around, pick up litter, help old people across the street, that kind of thing, for 16-year-olds. He also says social welfare systems come into it as well. If you're rewarding people for laziness, they're never going to be encouraged to go and take a stake in the community, as it were.
Wow, what a fascinating thought. I wish that had occurred to me. Oh, that's right. It occurs to most people.
I saw a couple of Brit intellectuals interviewed yesterday on TV, and they were throwing out various ideas. But the liberal guy and the conservative guy seem to be on the same page. And the liberal college professor, and I wish I had his name because it might be somebody you know, but he said that these were the bastard children of English liberalism. And there seemed to be quite a bit of agreement between the two political sides on that. So is that catching on as an idea that the social services have raised a group of people that think they should have everything all the time?
Exactly. Social services that hand out pretty much everything the family needs to live on, in quite nice houses very often, and has just left these young people to grow up without any sense of direction. And now it's rare for British governments to speak about this openly, because after all, this is a country that votes in left-wing administrations quite regularly, and I'm sure David Cameron's time in office will not be huge. He will likely lose to Labour at some point here. So he can't be too bold in what he says, but the measure of outrage here, national outrage over what happened last week, the looting, the burning of stores, burning of apartment buildings, is so huge. You might say that the government has a kind of a mandate now to do something about it and espouse a sort of a conservative attitude towards it. This country is fairly conservative in tone, and it doesn't take very much to provoke a bit of outrage here.
Alistair, I know very little about British politics, but I'm struck, though, by the similarities almost with Winston Churchill's strong statements about national security, the Nazis, etc., back in the day, in that if Cameron were to come out strong on this now, I think he might well get kicked out by Labour now. But as these problems continue to grow, and they must, and they become more and more serious, I'll bet he's ushered back in a few years, and as the old wise man.
Right. And who knows which way it's going to go. Right now, I think there's a lot of support for the government doing something to deprive these youngsters of what they've had, force them to work perhaps for their social security payouts. It's difficult to see. It would take a whole-scale restructuring of the system here. After all, as you guys will appreciate, once you've started a very generous social security system, you can't then take it away very easily. You have to reform it gradually. But right now is a time in history where they might be able to do that. In the short term, they're looking at policing. We clearly had policing failures there. They were perceived as being too weak on a couple of days. Now, Bill Bratton, somebody close to you, I think, former police chief in Los Angeles, is heading over here, he says, as a kind of a consultant to Britain's police force. That's got the unions here, a police union in High Dudgeon, saying we don't need any Americans telling us how to police our country.
Well, maybe you do.
Funnily enough, we do. And Prime Minister Cameron today was defending that. He said, look, whatever answers Americans have got, we'll listen to. So, any advice from Bratton, I think we welcomed here.
Well, here in California, we beat people down whether they deserve it or not sometimes. So we'll... Perhaps some sort of balance can be struck. Alistair Wanklyn of Fox News is on the line from London. Alistair, thanks very much.
Thank you. Oh. So I was reading this piece in the Wall Street Journal by this guy. He goes by Theodore Dalrymple, which is what do you call that when you have a fake name? It's a fake name.
It's a fake name.
The barbarians inside Britain's gates, and this article got a lot of attention last week. The youth of Britain have long placed a de facto curfew on the old, who in most places would no more think of venturing forth after dark than would peasants in Bram Stoker's Transylvania. Did you know this was going on, that people won't come out of their homes after dark all over Great Britain? because of the rampaging youth.
Read on, sir.
Indeed, well before the riots last week, respectable persons would not venture into the centers of most British cities or towns on Friday and Saturday nights for fear and in the certainty of encountering drunken and aggressive youngsters. In Britain nowadays, the difference between ordinary social life and riot is only a matter of degree, not of type. A short time ago, I gave a talk in an exquisite market town deep in the countryside. Came Friday night, however, and the inhabitants locked themselves into their houses against the invasion of the barbarians. In my own little market town of Bridgenorth in Shropshire, where not long ago a man was nearly beaten to death 20 yards from my house, drunken young people often rampage down one of its lovely streets, causing much damage and preventing sleep. No one, of course, dares to ask them to stop.
Wow.
If the authorities show neither the will nor the capacity to deal with such an easily solved problem, which is public drunkenness, and willfully do all they can to worsen it, is it any wonder that they will exhibit in the face of more difficult problems all the courage and determination of frightened rabbits? The rioters in the news last week had a thwarted sense of entitlement that has been assiduously cultivated by an alliance of intellectuals, governments, and bureaucrats. We're fed up with being broke, one rioter was reported as having said, as if having enough money to satisfy one's desires were a human right rather than something to be earned. There are people here with nothing, this rioter continued. Nothing, that is, except for an education that costs taxpayers $80,000, a roof over their head, clothes on their backs, shoes on their feet, food in their stomachs, a cell phone, a flat-screen TV, a refrigerator, an electric stove, heating and lighting, hot and cold running water, a guaranteed income, free medical care, and all of the same for any children that they might care to propagate.
Though the outcome of these policies is now inescapable. I mean, it's happening all over Europe, clearly and practically without exception. The majority of people in California would agree with those thugs in the streets.
Keep going that direction.
They have no idea what's happening over there and why, and still think those policies are good because I'm getting mine.
But while the rioters have been maintained in a condition of near permanent unemployment by government subvention augmented by criminal activity, Britain was importing labor to man its service industries. You can travel up and down the country and you can be sure that all the decent hotels and restaurants will be manned overwhelmingly by young Forders, not a young Briton in sight. He puts in parentheses, thank God, because the young Brits are so out of control.
Wow.
Does it sound like anywhere to you?
Wow.
Does that sound like anywhere you live?
God, and through my whole life, the educated, the so-called leaders, the leading lights intellectually especially, have been aspiring to be more and more European. I mean, that's become such a cliche in my life, I just snicker at it when I hear it. And look what's happening. God dang it. Barry Goldwater, where have you gone?
We have the paradox of high youth
unemployment. Oh, that's right. Into the ground. Sorry.
We have the paradox of high youth unemployment, and at the very same time, we suck in young workers from abroad to do our work.
Sound familiar?
I know.
More and more social programs, more and more sense of entitlement, more and more anger if any benefits are reduced.
The culture in which the young unemployed have immersed themselves is not one that is likely to promote virtues such as self-discipline, honesty, and diligence. 4 lines from the most famous lyric of the late and unlamentable Amy Winehouse should establish the point. I didn't get a lot in class, but I know it don't come in a shot glass. They tried to make me go to rehab, but I said no, no, no. This message is not quite the same as, for example, he uses a Shakespeare quote that wouldn't matter to you. Furthermore, all the young rioters will have had long experience of the prodigious efforts of the British criminal justice system to confer impunity upon lawbreakers. First, the police are too busy with their paperwork to catch the criminals, but if by some chance hardly more than 1 in 20 that they do catch them, the court's obliged by inflicting ludicrously lenient sentences. I saw him interviewed yesterday. He said, the only reason we don't have this sort of crime all the time is that most of the bad guys have yet to do the math and figure out they can get away with it anytime they want.
Wow.
Isn't that something?
Just unbelievable.
It is unbelievable.
I feel like I'm standing next to the train tracks, and somebody I love very much is on the tracks. I keep saying, there's a train. Can you hear it? See it? Here it comes. Nah, it's fine. No, look, it's closer now. Please step off the tracks. Nah, I'm not worried about it.
And so
I like standing here. Standing here is what I want. Standing here is fair.
And so you had this fairly conservative guy here speaking, and then the other guy was a supposedly claims to be liberal college professor in Great Britain, and he was saying a lot of the same things. He said these young people don't realize that the battle that they're fighting was won years ago. for various benefits and an opportunity and everything like that.
Right.
And they have everything now.
Right.
They're spoiled and don't realize they have everything, and they're still fighting the battle of generations ago.
It's funny. Words,
which is interesting.
Words matter. I love words. Always have. But entitlements make people feel like they're entitled to them. And the youth of Britain take all that stuff that you just described for granted because it's freaking granted to them.
That is why you take things for granted.
And that's when he lost his mind. He was reduced to a quivering pile of jelly, just making animal sounds, crouched in the corner like a beast, drooling for the rest of his life.
How interesting is that, though? It's like getting to look into the future. Although we don't do anything about it.
No, we don't.
What's coming up in your news, Marshall?
I got to ask Joe, are you channeling Dr. Hunter S. Thompson right there? Coming up, are you ready for a double dip? The future of pension reform in California and a mother's toughest critics, other moms. 3 minutes from now, Armstrong and Getty.
No doubt about that.